All right, how's everyone doing? I'm Rich CELENZA. Thanks for tuning into the Rich CELENZA Show. WTF are you talking about? And the one thing I want to touch on today is actually something I hear about all the time, or maybe I should say I think about this all the time, and that is a lot of people I see become a prisoner of the moment. And I see this all the time, actually, and I think one of the reasons I should say I see or even hear this all the time is because I have a lot of family members from the Midwest, especially Chicago, and friends. And I moved to Florida at 18 years old, and then I went back and forth to Chicago a couple times, and then I lived in San Diego for I don't know how many years. But for the most part, I loved living in warm climates. And it seems a lot of times that when it comes to my family members or friends, they almost are always caught in a situation where they become not only a prisoner of the moment or a prisoner almost inside their own life, and they just can't escape it. And I think a lot of people could relate to this. So today I was going back and forth with a friend who's dying to move to Florida, but there always seems to be an excuse why he can't get there. And what's interesting is he's a single dude now, and he can probably make the move. And it's not just him. He's a great guy. There's just tons of people where I find, and this isn't just about moving to another state or another city or that. I'm just using this for an example. So in this case, I always said, the one thing I hear more than anything living in Florida, and even when I lived in California, especially when I was dealing with middle-aged or older people, is by the time a lot of them get there, the one regret that they have more than anything is that they didn't get there earlier, especially when they were younger, to truly enjoy a life of, being basically really nice weather year-round. You just kind of, it's almost like something you don't believe in, or, you're actually, it's not going to be as great as you think it is, or you actually think it's better than it is, whatever the case may be. You just can never escape your environment to get where you want to be. And then when you get there, most of the time, people love it, or they like it a lot more than where they were for the most part. But again, growing up, and I've seen this with tons of my family members, and again, I'm just going to relate this to moving or, breaking out of a prison to a certain degree, which I'm going to include, obviously, living inside of a prison. And that doesn't mean your life is horrible or you live in a prison, like a prison. I'm just saying you want to live somewhere else, or you want to be somewhere else. That can even be a snowbird, for instance, or that could be whatever the case may be. But in this case, there always seems to be an excuse stopping you from getting to where you want to go. Not only moving, but even mentally. So moving, like I always said when I was younger, first with a lot of my friends, they couldn't move because they signed up for a college in Illinois, for instance, or in the Midwest, for instance. So they didn't want to, in-state tuition, and I get all that. But I was moving to Florida regardless, or California. I didn't give a shit. I despise cold weather, still do. But I can work in it, no problem. But I always said it's not working, and it's one thing, but I always know in the back of my head I'm always flying to warmth, or where I live is a lot different than where I work. I can kind of work in cold, no problem. That's not a big deal for me, but I just know where I live is where I'm kind of, where I'm very happy. Now, when I've lived in Chicago for different spurts and traveled a lot, and I was in cold weather, knowing I was going back to cold weather made me crazy, because I just couldn't escape it for me, and I felt like I was in a prison. Now, some people can't take it, and they just got to break out of the prison, but back to people living inside this mental prison, again, living, say, in Chicago, my friends going to college, and then eventually a lot of them went into law school, or they ended up getting jobs in Chicago, so guess what? They can't move, and then before you know it, they meet a girl, and then she doesn't want to move, most likely, and then before you know it, you're engaged, and then you're kind of tied into that. She doesn't want to leave her family. Your family doesn't want to leave. Then you're married. Before you know it, you have kids. You don't want to take the kids out of school. You can't move with kids, and then as they get older, the kids are getting older, and if, again, it's kind of a cycle where then you don't want to leave your kids, even if they're in college, and before you know it, your kids then get engaged, then you have grandkids, you can't leave either, and then when you do leave, it's for short spurts. The whole thing never seems to stop. But I always said you need to kind of figure out a formula in your life, I believe, if you really want to break out, you've kind of got to just figure out what pieces are going to get you to where you need to be, or else it's very hard to really move unless you're kind of like myself, who I call myself kind of a gypsy snob. It sounds ridiculous, but I kind of like always being on the go. But I'm not the type of guy who likes to, I'm not like a guy who's going to be backpacking it or any of these things. I like to eat good meals. I like to stay in hotels. And it's more about a lifestyle than almost a paycheck to a certain degree. I like to live a certain way. That doesn't mean I'm highfalutin, because I'm always trying to actually save money, especially for a company I work for, or doing things in that nature. I don't like spending excess money. When I was younger, I used to spend a lot of money when I made a lot of money, and I am not saying I regret that, but I could have took a lot of that money and put it to use, especially as my kids got older. But I don't think a lot of times when you're paying for a lot of things that it's actually worth it at the end of the day. Hotels could be, I mean, I've stayed in some luxury hotels. They're beautiful and everything, but a lot of times when you travel for work, I used to say I'm basically renting a bed. Because I'm on the go. I'm not a guy who's going to sit in my hotel room after work or sit there for 10 hours a day. No, I usually, if I'm working, then I go work out, or then I go eat dinner, and then I come in, and then I literally go to bed. Then I wake up and I'm gone. That's just the type of person I am. But back to the formula, or creating kind of like like if you were to make your life, how do I say this? So life, a lot of times I think we make it so much more complicated than it is, when it doesn't have to be, because just a few small steps are trying to, and again, if you have a job and you're a lifer, and you have 401ks, and you've been with the company so long and you're tied up, I get it 100%. But a lot of people I do know that are tied into a lot of companies or living certain lifestyles are absolutely very miserable. And I find it quite interesting. Back to, I'll just use Chicago for an example, is because I've met so many people there that have bad jobs, that are miserable, that don't make any money, but are afraid to leave because they're broke. I get it. Then I've also met tons of people that are kind of wealthy. And don't get me wrong, they may get a condo in South Florida or wherever, Arizona, it could be Vegas, whatever, but they don't get there nearly as much as they want. So they have money now, and I always said, if I'm poor, why would I stay in the Midwest and freeze? That was just me saying this. And if I was wealthy, why would I stay in the Midwest? Because I have money now. I would want to be in a warmer climate year-round to enjoy my life differently. But again, back to, that was just my perspective on how I used to look at things. But to a lot of people, I think, if you look at the ingredients in, like, how do I say this? So let's take pizza, for instance. Most people I know love pizza. And for the most part, if you look at pizza, it's probably the simplest thing you can make. It's dough with marinara sauce, red sauce, to pomodoro, whatever you want to say, with cheese. And then you add everything else onto it. But the truth is, you can usually just eat a great piece of pizza. And it's one of the simplest things to make and to enjoy. And I think a lot of life is really that simple. But we have all these other things that we kind of keep adding on, thinking they're going to make us happier. And back to, a lot of people, I think, like, for instance, if you're living a lot of times a life, or living in a place you don't want to be, you keep adding a lot of different components with the hopes it'll make you feel better. And I think a lot of times what it ends up doing is putting you more in debt and stressing you out even more, if that makes sense. When if you just kind of simplify things, your life would be, I think, a lot richer. So if you really do want to hypothetically move to another state, or you want to make certain changes in your life, really start analyzing all this other baggage, or all these other expenses, and all these other things that you kind of keep bringing into your life. Instead of doing that, start weeding them out. And I know you may be like, that's kind of ridiculous. Because I have a home, I'm not going to sell my home. I have equity in my home, or whatever. Okay, we got it. I have to have this type of car. Well, you really don't have to have that expensive of a car. You don't need that many cars. Well, I need to, I go out to dinners to enjoy myself. Well, a lot of times you're eating unhealthier foods, and you're getting fatter, and you're becoming obese. What are the other things you're doing? Whatever those, a lot of people I know shop a lot more than they should. They spend money on a lot of clothing in malls that they don't have to. You can go secondhand stores. You could go consignment store shopping. You could look for sales. If you really want to make changes, again, you got to really be realistic to step back and analyze your life. And if you do want to, hypothetically, I'm just using for an existence, get a place in Florida, if it's a condo, or move to that place, come up with the formula that's going to work. Again, don't be a prisoner of the environment and looking at your situation right now, because right now that looks ridiculous probably for you, right? Like a lot of people. But right now isn't always what's going to be, obviously, right? You're moving forward. You're never going backwards. So forget about the past. That doesn't mean forget what you've learned from the past. What I'm saying is you need to learn. You want a different future. And if you're not willing to put the ingredients in or learn a new formula to get you to where you want to be, then you're kind of wasting your time. You're kind of spinning your circles. I always say it's kind of like a NASCAR race a little bit, where you're in the race, right? And you just kind of keep going in circles, right? And sometimes you feel like you're winning the race, sometimes you're losing the race, sometimes you crash, whatever the case may be, but you are just going in circles and you keep ending up in the same spot you were. And even if you're not in the same spot, you're just kind of just, again, going nowhere. You kind of got to be the type of person to break out of there and start setting a new path and really kind of, I call it like setting a new GPS system to start making. And again, I think a lot of times the smaller the move you make, the better off you are. It's kind of like I say too, is like if you're driving in traffic and you make a quick hard right or a left into traffic or whatever, that doesn't mean you need to be indecisive. And, when there's an opening, there's an opening. But a lot of times if you go at a moderate pace, if someone's there or something goes down, you may hit ice or whatever the case may be, you can recover. So it's kind of like somebody, I think, again, where you're, again, like cooking a good meal with the ingredients, you start putting all these different types of ingredients to make the dish that you love and look at your life as the dish a little bit. So if you really do, I'm just using moving out of the state, you might really obviously you're going to be searching for another job, or you maybe want to search another business opportunity, whatever the case may be. Now, all that's wonderful, but here's what the bottom line is when it comes to anything you want to do. You got to have the balls to do it. The truth is most people don't. And again, that I'm not even talking about moving to another state. I was just using that. But if you want to make changes in your career, in your life, I don't care if it's working out. I don't care if it's different relationships you want, or you want to start meeting new people. You really got to have the balls to, really go after it. Because most people are huge talkers. They just, again, don't have the balls to do it or the know-how. And again, if you don't know, if you kind of know what you want, right, that's, kind of almost start there and work your way backwards. But a lot of people don't even really know what they want. They know what they want to talk about and kind of what they want. They just don't know how to figure out a way on how to get there. And life is about creativity. If you don't know how to create the life you want to lead, then nobody else is going to basically do it for you, right? You can't expect your parents, if you're married, your girlfriend, anybody else to kind of create the life you wanted. I think a lot of us do, though, lose our independence especially in relationships, because we depend on other people to make us happy. And the truth is the only one who's going to make you happy is you. I mean, I don't care who you think, whatever you think someone's willing to offer, which is wonderful. If you think, I'm going to find the perfect woman and all these things, and that's when I'm going to be happy. The truth is most likely if you need something else or you need someone else to make you happy, you're most likely, you're not happy yourself. I say that in one of my books at the end of it. I says the minute you realize you don't need anyone to make yourself, how do I say that? The minute you don't realize you don't need anyone to make you complete is when you are. That's kind of a slogan I have, because I always used to think I need this, then I need kids, and then I need the house, and then I need certain cars, and then I need the vacation, and then I need this. Those were wonderful things to want, and I was kind of putting my formula or figuring it all out. But then I also had to realize, a lot of these things came with a lot of responsibilities I didn't realize, which are obviously expenses. So I started to weigh it out. What do you really like? What's working and what isn't working? Because huge car payments and insurance for those cars and gas, all these other things, I'm like, do I really need to spend thousands of dollars a month on a car? Let's back that up. Do I really need to spend this much money on a mortgage? Do I really need to travel this much? Or when I do travel, like really spend that amount of money? All these different types of things. Because at one minute I'm doing something that I know was making me very happy. But the truth is, kind of in hindsight, it's almost like shopper's remorse. After I look back at it, I'm like, wow, I could have really saved a lot of money or did things differently, which I would have been kind of happier on both ends. I was happy that I'm doing all these things, but at what cost? So, and in your life, I talk about being flexible all the time. But there also comes a time in your life where you don't have to always compromise. So a lot of times we really know what we want, but we'll almost convince ourselves out of it because we either don't think we deserve it or we think it's out of our reach. Maybe we think we're too stupid to get it, or maybe we think we'll always be broke. Or it can just be something like a person. You may want to be in a relationship with a certain type of person. You may not think you deserve that again. All these different types of things. Figure out really what you want. Because, again, if you don't really in your heart know what you want, you're kind of going to be lost for the rest of your life, or just lost in general. And if you're always kind of, I guess you could say, laid back and kind of accepting what always is happening in your life and not succeeding or getting what you want, again, that's on you. So again, you have to be creative to say, you know what, how am I truly going to get from A to Z? And every letter in between there, you are going to have to go through, most likely. It's not as simple as anyone, anything you think is going to go wrong, most likely is going to go wrong. And I don't care if you're starting a new business. I don't care if you're going to go work out. I don't care if it's a relationship. Nothing runs smooth because it's just we live in a world of chaos. Things are constantly coming at us from every direction, even mentally, the things we have to go through, physically, the things we have to go through, emotionally, the things we're all going to have to go through. Nothing is smooth. No one dodges all the bullets. I don't care who you are. I talk about that all the time, where your life is, it's almost like a dream to a certain degree. And you can make it to a certain degree a good dream, or it can end up a nightmare. It's really kind of on you. And again, things may come into your life that you have no control over. You could get in a car accident, or you may have been in a car accident where it paralyzes you. Or you may run across something where you win the lottery, hypothetically, and it goes the other way. I say a lot of times there's all these things kind of going our way in life every day, especially when I travel. I really looked at that, especially over the years, because people are like, oh, traveling sucks, oh, your flight was delayed. I'm like, hey, I don't care when the flight's delayed. I only care that it lands safely. And I look at my life like that. If I look at throughout the day how many places I drive to, how many things I'm doing, how many people, including my parents, my daughters, my loved ones, everyone's safe. I didn't get a call, someone died. Because I don't know if you have, but I've had those shocking phone calls where family members have suddenly passed. That goes for all different ages, illnesses, all these things. So do not take your life for granted, and obviously don't take others for granted as well, especially if you have parents that are still alive, siblings, even your colleagues or whoever. Really appreciate every day with them. And I always talk about it in my program, Mastering Self-Confidence, lead by example. Try to remember those words, right? And there's a famous Navy SEAL, too, this dude that I love. What is his, what's his name? How would I forget it? Anyways, he talks about every time something goes wrong, he says good. Jocko, I think is his name. He has a podcast. He's a Marine. He's a Navy SEAL instructor, everything. He's unbelievable. But his theory in life is, no matter what happens in your life, it's good. And that is good or bad. So if you fail, good, you learn something. If you didn't succeed at something, obviously, or you're going for certain goals and you keep failing, good. You are constantly learning. You didn't get what you want today, good. Things didn't go your way. No matter what the situation is, he says good. And I really believe that, because you're learning from everything, and you don't let everything make you crazy. Again, back to being a prisoner in your own mind. and being a prisoner of the moment. Don't let the world defeat you. Life is short again. Every time something hits you, you have to go through it. My mother always says this too, and I love that about her. She says, you can knock me down, but you're never going to knock me out. And if you truly want things, again, in your life, you are going to have to constantly keep getting up. I say jumping over hurdles. No matter what, there's constantly going to be hurdles. And you have two options. You go over the hurdle, you quit, or you quit, right? You succeed or you quit. That doesn't mean you necessarily have to always win the race, because you're really not competing, truthfully, against anyone but yourself. And quit getting caught up with the Joneses, or I call them the jagoffs, because in life, it really doesn't exist. I don't care if you're brothers, your cousins, your uncles, your dad. I don't care who it is. You're not competing with them. Now, if you are competing, that's on you. Maybe they're competing with you. But no one wants to, usually, for the most part, live the exact same life as someone else. So again, you have to run your own race, and you have to figure out, really what you want and how to win that race, or how to get to where you want to be. So I'm going to wrap it up there. Thanks for tuning in. Besides the podcast, I got a YouTube channel out there. It's just my name, Rich CELENZA. We're on Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn as well. So, I'm going to wrap it up there. Take care, and I wish you nothing but the best.